The plugin essentially has an EQ section, dynamic section, stereo and limiting options with bypass buttons for the EQ and dynamic section. The input is really easy to use and has a great feature that I really like, a sensitivity LED. It's like a traffic light system for your music's input levels. When the LED is off, the signal is too low. Green is good, yellow is optimal, and of course red. You're going to clip the signal. For mastering, and as stated in the manual, make sure that when you set the input level, you play the loudest parts of your track to get an accurate input level. Of course, if you've mixed correctly though, and the level is set right, you shouldn't need to touch the input level unless you want to drive the signal more. For the EQ section, there are 3 tone shaping options, starting with the high. As the manual states, it will add some sparkle to the mix, probably some kind of fixed high shelf, I'd say. I've found the high end on this plugin to be very good. Plugins for me, especially on the top, can often be very brittle and require careful setting to get it sounding right. Although you'll need to keep it fairly subtle with the IMP, it's a very good top end EQ to bring out the highs, especially hats and percussion. The body dial works well too, and this track in particular responds well to the dial being boosted. But as with most low mid EQs, it's all down to the mix itself. Add too much to the wrong track and you could end up with a rather cloudy mix lacking in focus. So the body dial, I would say use it in the right context. Again, something I like about this plugin is it's not over the top when dialing in higher numbers. It results in a subtle boost rather than a great big one, which is a good thing because, let's face it, we all like to crank up the dials. For the low, I see it as essentially a low shelf, but it is a lot more than that. Under the hood, the processing is both low-end EQ and some kind of harmonic saturation. One thing that I've found using the low is, unlike a lot of plugins, this one seems to add a nice, rich warmth, that analog sound you might say. The other much discussed feature is the root key system, in other words, the relationship between pitch and frequency. Of course, frequency and pitch are the same thing. Any EQ can be set to target a specific note, but it's nice for convenience sake to quickly dial it in. For example, this track is in the key of C minor, so I've gone for the 5th of the scale, which is the note G. Seems to give good results. For your music, you could dial in the main bass note of the track, for example, or other notes from the scale to see which frequencies have the best impact on the low end. The dynamic section really is the area of the plugin that will pull frequencies forward in the mix, and this really is the part of the plugin that has that magic sauce. So what's it all about? The magic dial is an exciter. It will excite frequencies and boost the dynamics, which can be further controlled by the focus and dynamic punch sliders. The more mushroom magic you dial in, I find, the more full the mix sounds, particularly in the upper mids. I guess this is because the upper mids are being excited more and our ears are more sensitive to those frequencies. If you write electronic music and want more bite and punch, you'll find higher settings with the dynamic punch slider will give really good results. If you write music that doesn't need quite as much transient punch, you'll find lower settings will work well too. The focus slider is all about taste. I have found the focus slider useful to bring the mix into, well, more focus in the upper mids, especially with higher settings. Carefully combining the focus and dynamic punch can really bring out pleasant qualities in the upper mids. Shortly, let's look at this in action. The stereo image is linked to the magic section. I'll be honest, I'm not 100% sure why. Perhaps there's some kind of sidechaining with higher magic settings, but to be honest, I'm struggling to hear how they're linked. Just be aware, if you bypass the magic settings, you'll bypass the stereo imaging dial. The limiter is really good, but it's a Waves plugin, so it's gonna be. It doesn't actually smash the mix to bits, but you can easily add gain, and the clip and limit modes are really cool. They allow you to limit the music in different ways. Clip is great for mastering. It's gentle on the mix, leaving transients intact. You could say it's somewhat more transparent, meaning you can push it quite hard without killing your music. The limit mode is softer and warmer on the mix, and to me seems to smooth transients ever so slightly, which can be good if you want to add a touch of warmth to the mix. Acoustic music, for example, might benefit from limit mode, but whatever style of music you write, make sure you experiment and see what works for your music. Only you can tell which one to go for. The output section is easy. It allows you to adjust the output. If it's the last plugin in the chain, I'd recommend settings between -0.1 and -0.3 so you don't clip the signal. For A-Bing, you could use a console similar to this one, which I talk about in my mastering course at masteringinlogic.com. It's set up like this in Logic so that I can easily A-B the master track with the original mix at the same level. This allows me to ultimately judge if I'm improving the mix or making it worse.